webinar. Thank you for joining us this evening. So just to let you know that we will be recording this meeting. So if you would rather not be on camera, please can you switch off your camera. You have been automatically muted as you've come into the meeting. So if throughout the meeting you would like to speak, please raise your hand on the raise button, which should be at the top of your screen. The focus of today is the Adopt Fund, and we've got Thomas Slattery with us, who I'll introduce in a moment. Just to go through a quick few things before I introduce Thomas. We want the opportunity today for you to all ask questions. So you'll notice there is a Q&A function, so please don't hesitate to put questions in the chat as we go through the meeting. And go through the presentation, and we'll pick those up and feed that into our discussion. But after Thomas has done his presentation, we can we will. I've just noticed someone can't hear. Could everybody else? So Trev said you can't hear. Can everybody else hear? Yes, Henry, you're saying you can hear. That's good. So it might be something to do with Trev's computer. So Shyla, could you message in the in the box for me, thank you. Yes, so I can't remember, I've lost my train of thought. Oh yes, we're encouraging lots of questions. As anybody that knows me, I want this to be an opportunity for you to find out get as much as it from as you possibly can. So please don't be shy in coming forward with questions after Tom has finished his presentation. Just to kind of give you a bit of background for those of you that haven't come across us before, I'm Charlie. I'm from Devon County Council, and I'm from the Business Support and Innovation team, and I oversee the food and farming projects within our team. We've also got Shyla from my team, who has kindly been heading up this the admin and got this pulled together for us really quickly, so I really appreciate that, Shyla. And we run several food and farming projects for Devon farmers. One of them is the Devon Agri-Tech Alliance, and that is about providing opportunities like this for you to engage in innovation, growth, resilience around within the agricultural industry in Devon. So today, obviously picking up on the Adopt Fund, very much in theme with innovation in farming, and we want to kind of always hear from you in terms of what we can do to support. So Shyla will put in our email address in the chat. So if after today you have ideas around what might help you within the farming community, what topics you'd like to hear more information about, what we can do to support, please don't hesitate in giving us a shout, because we want to hear from you, and we want to make sure that we're doing in line with what actually the farmer's voice is saying, rather than what we might think. So yeah, please don't ever hesitate to get in touch. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Tom Slattery, who's leading on the Adopt Support Hub, who's going to tell you a bit about the Adopt Fund. And yeah, after that, we'll be open to questions. So over to you, Tom.
Hi, everyone. And I think, honestly, firstly, Charlotte, Shashila, thank you so much for organising this at a very short notice. And more importantly, thanks to everyone turning up at 6 p.m. on a Monday. So just very quickly on me. So I've been working in this space for a number of years, specifically in trying to understand like how we can engage the farming community in innovation, R&D and technology, and how to make sure that the farming community are front and centre of that. So this is something I'm really deeply passionate about, and I was really genuinely excited when this Adopt funding was finally announced, and I was also really pleased that part of that fund was the funding of the Adopt Support Hub, which is what I'm part of. That being there to kind of give as much help and support, and genuinely as literally all the help and support we possibly can to farmers and groups of farmers that are interested in trying to do get funding to do on-farm innovations and trials. I've sort of I've given these talks quite a few times, as you can imagine, over the last few months. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go. I don't know where everyone's knowledge base is at in terms of adopt and what it's all about. So I'm going to whack up a presentation, sorry to be boring, and just run through that relatively quickly, and then leave as much time as possible for questions and answers, because I think that seems to be where the most benefit comes from. But it's a good idea to try and get everyone on the same page. So if you just bear with me, I will get these slides up. Oh, Shashula, have I been given permission to do that? No, I haven't. I will let you give me that permission. We probably should have done that in the
sorry about that.
the preparatory time we had before.
Otherwise, I can share mine.
While I'm doing that, if on the call, if you've got a really good knowledge of what adopt is, etc., could you put the little thumbs up thing in the chat, and that means I can whiz through certain bits. Henry definitely does. Doesn't look like getting much else. And then I guess just to build on what Charlie was saying, please just put any questions you've got in the Q&A as things come up through that, and I will try and get through as much. If I can't answer the questions, because some of them get quite detailed on this call, we can either follow up after the call, or I can put you in touch with one of the experts we have at the support hub, or we can try and get the question directly answered through Innovate UK.
We've just had a post in the chat, Tom, saying no knowledge whatsoever. So
okay, all right.
Okay. But cover the lot in the presentation.
All right, so I'm just going to start off. So on the basis of that, so what is adopt? Okay, so adopt at its fundamental level is a £20 million funding from DEFRA, funded by DEFRA, and is being delivered through Innovate UK. If you're not aware of Innovate UK, they're a big UK government organisation that facilitates kind of grant funding to all kinds of organisations across all different sectors. A few years ago, DEFRA ring-fenced a large sum of money for what was called the Farming Innovation Programme. That's been running for a few years now. And the Farming Innovation Programme has been distributing grants across all kinds of technology innovation within the kind of broader farming sector. A lot of that previously has been more directed towards early stage technology development and potentially sort of later stage technology development, and also how some of that works with farmers. There's been a huge effort with that to ensure that farmers, growers and foresters have been involved in that, but it has been more about developing technology, which is great, but it's not what it's all about, is it? And so what I really, really like about the Adopt Fund is it's not just about developing and testing technologies, it's about practices and technologies. And essentially what we're talking about there is an opportunity for farmers and foresters and growers and so I've just seen I can share now, to have an opportunity to lead projects and to test and trial things that they want to test and trial. Okay, I can get my little slides up now. Is that come up? Can everyone see that? Yeah, great. Okay, fine. So as I was saying, this new funds, and I really do need to reiterate this, and I think it's really important difference between lots of the fundings come for this. This is farmer-led. This is all about farmers, forest and growers, but I'm not going to keep saying farmers. Yeah, I will 100% share these afterwards. This is about for farmers, led by farmers, and to do the kind of test trials and innovation research that farmers, foresters and growers feel is important to be done. So I just really want to make that clear from the offset. It doesn't mean that other people can't get involved in it, but this has to be led by farmers. So there are two types of funding available. There is a support grant, which is £2,500 for a farmer to partner up with a facilitator. And I know that some of the people on this call will be registered facilitators, and we'll go on to a bit more about what facilitators are in a minute. But for a farmer to match up with a facilitator and take a very, very early stage idea or a challenge that they've that they've seen on farm or within the industry, and to work out how to develop that up into a full grant proposal. So the second thing that's available are the full grants. And these are, again, farmer-led projects between 50 and £100,000. So that's the full project cost, and they'll run between 1 and 2 years. So the reason you don't have to apply for a support grant, you can go straight in for a full grant, and lots of people are. The reason for the support grants is an understanding that a lot of people in this sector may never have even heard of Innovate UK. They may never have done testing and trialing. They may never have done research and innovation. They certainly may not have applied for a grant before. And so we didn't want that to be, or Innovate and Devon didn't want that to be a barrier to people applying. So there's an opportunity to apply for a much smaller and very easy to apply for grant to help kind of get a full grant prepared. So that's just to explain what those two grants are and why they exist. And I can answer more questions when we get to the Q&A. So just again, and I've not to repeat myself, but just to be very clear. So who's this for? So it's for farmers, growers and foresters in England that have to lead. So that one person has to lead the project, and that has to be a farmer, forester or grower in England. This is collaborative, and so at least one other farmer, forester or grower has to be within the project, and that second, third, fourth, fifth farmer can be within England, Wales, Northern Ireland or Scotland. We're looking for people who are experimenting or curious about improving practices or adopting technologies on the farm, and they can also bring in collaborators in those UK businesses, and that could be tech companies, academics, other innovators. So we can get into that a little bit more in a second, but just to be clear on that's the basic structure. Kind of projects are eligible. So, I mean, as I said, I'll share these slides afterwards, and I'll put them up to read. But the way that I've been trying to explain this is what we're looking for, what Innovate and Devon are looking for, is a group of farmers who are looking to run a practical on-farm trial that is going to improve productivity, sustainability, resilience. It's going to just practically improve something for them as a group of farmers, like on their farm, something practical and real world. And the output of this project over a year or two was, and it's open innovation. So this isn't about developing new technical IP that's going to be held in. The idea is to be trying to develop new learnings, and the outputs is going to be stuff that is going to be helpful to a broader set of other farmers, foresters or growers across the country. So those are like the two key things to be thinking about. Like, is this a project that's going to have some potentially going to have some big practical benefit on our farms? And once we've done this, are we going to be able to share this knowledge? And is it going to be something that like other farmers are going to find practical and useful? And I think if it ticks those two boxes, it kind of fits within the eligibility criteria. And to be clear, like the eligibility criteria across this set of grants is much broader and wider than it is for most Innovate grants. And part of the reason for that is to try and make this as open and as useful to farmers in a sector where I think there's an acknowledgement that you can't necessarily be really strict about exactly what the solutions that people are looking for are. I put this in here, and I'm going to skip over it because I think I'll probably send this out. But this is just some a bit more detail on the kind of the structuring of these grants. I think it's worth. I'll just flick this a little bit further. So on the full grant, as you can see, there's like a mandatory about what's required, and I sort of covered this a little bit before, but there's got to be one lead farmer, which is an English grower or forester. There's going to be at least one other farming business. You've got to have a project facilitator within the mix. And then optionally, you can bring in research or technical partners. But there's the only three things that needs to be handled, which is basically 2 farmers and a project facilitator. And that's the basic requirements for a team. So that's what the grants are, and again we can get into as much as we want in the Q&A. I'm part of the support hub, so as I said, there's an acknowledgement that lots of people have never done this before, and so I'm part of the support hub, which is a team of people that you can pick up the phone to, you can email or fill in an inquiry form at any point within this. So if you've got an incredibly early stage idea, or a group of you got a really early stage idea, and you want to pick up the phone and find out, is it eligible? How could we potentially turn that into a trial? Like where do we need to improve on that? Can you put me in touch with people who've done something similar? Can you put me in touch with the technical partner? You know, can you review my application for me? Once the trials are started, we'll be there to help people if they've got issues with the trialing, etc., etc. So the support hub is there. It is absolutely free, fully funded. You can contact it in lots of different ways, and all of these contact details will be in at the end of this, and I'll send them around. And I really do encourage anyone who's thinking about this. Obviously, facilitators on the call is slightly different, and we'll jump onto that. Any farmers that are thinking about something around this, I just recommend just picking up the phone or sending an email to the support hub, to find out a bit more about how it might work. I think it's worth mentioning project facilitators for two reasons. So for people who are on the call and have registered project facilitators, it'd be really good to hear from you a bit on this call with some questions. All projects, both the support grants and the full grants, need to have a project facilitator. The project facilitator is a quite specific role that is looking to cover off the administrative project management role within a grant. So all Innovate grants still have a certain amount of requirements in terms of, as I said, sort of timesheets, costings, project management requirements, reporting requirements. And this is stuff that just frankly isn't within the expertise and knowledge base of most people, and probably not the vast majority of farmers, forests and growers. And so the realization of that was that let's make it mandatory to have a project facilitator involved in the project who can deal with all of the parts around that, which are a requirement of a grant funded project, but aren't necessarily something that most people involved in the project want to be involved in, to free up the time for the rest of the project people, particularly the farmers, to actually focus on what they're interested in, which is doing the on-farm trials. So that's the reason for the project facilitators. The final point being, as I said, the best place to get started is to contact the support hub. But I think this is probably a good point for me to sort of stop, take a breath, because I want to do that quite quickly, and then answer some questions. So I'm hoping there'll be some.
Thanks, Tom. So one actually quite timely in terms of the facilitator piece. We've had a question saying, can one of the farmers be the facilitator as well?
No. So we've been asked this. So we've been asked this question a number of times, if a technical person can also be a facilitator, and the answer. So we've not been asked that question before. So people have asked, could someone who's a technical consultant, so let's say someone who was coming in, for example, to give technical assistance, let's say as a vet, or someone who was coming in to give technical assistance like a drone operator or something like that, could they also be the facilitator? Yes, but we just need to be very clear in the application. This is time that person will spend being a facilitator, and this is time, and this is what they'll be doing as a technical consultant. And the reason for that is we need to make sure there's no risk of like double dipping, as it's sort of seen in terms of like, oh, this person's time is basically being paid for twice, which is obviously like a bit of a big no-no when it comes to grant funding. So if I applied that answer that we've given to quite a lot of people, I can't see why, in theory, you couldn't have the project facilitator being one of the farming partners. If that person was really comfortable with doing that and they'd done it loads before. I think obviously the idea was to allow the farmers to go and do what they're passionate about and good at, and then to have another individual who's very experienced in project management and grant administration to do that. I'll note that down, and if the person who's asked the question wants to come to me directly, we can try and get a more definitive answer from Innovate, if that's helpful.
Thanks, Tom. We've also had a question, is there a maximum percentage of cost of project that we get?
So, so if this is talking about kind of what farmers are up to 80%, if that, what is the question?
Hold on, let me come back to the
So I just want to make sure, because when it comes to these ones around money,
it was Bryony. I don't know, Bryony, if you wanted to put in if you want to either come on to, if you're brave to come onto camera to clarify your question, or if you wanted to put something in the chat to clarify what you meant by your question. So the question is there a maximum percentage of cost of project that we get?
I assume I understand the question. And by the way, you don't have to come on camera, you can just come on voice. So farmers at 80% eligibility, sorry, 80% funded. So, you know, if the farmer's cost was 10,000, they can claim up to 80% of that, which in Venice is the highest Innovate's ever managed to be able to offer in it, sort of in these categories. That I do appreciate that for a lot of people that extra 20% is still, depending on the size of the project, you know, is a large amount. And there are separate conversations happening potentially around whether third-party organisations could try and look at a sort of scholarship fund or something like that. But yes, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Can you give us some ideas that have been done so far? So there's been one round so far, isn't there? Is there any kind of ideas coming through of the sorts of projects that have been done before?
So the first round of support grants closed on the 12th of June, and the full grants, the first round of full grants is closing in 2 days' time. And I think that's actually a good point to make the point that so that's round one. There are a further 4 rounds, and this is all, by the way, linked through on the links that I put in that document, which I'll share afterwards. There's going to be a further 4 rounds this year, and then we're expecting another 5 rounds next year as well. But that's the dates on that's to be confirmed. So on the 25th, round 1 closes. On the 26th, round 2 will open, and that's open for 2 months. And then that will close the next day, round 3 will open. And the idea of that was, rather than doing what would normally happen with a lot of these grants, which is to have one window and expect everyone to apply into that, to have 5 windows across the year to give, so that people could learn, as your question was asking, what kind of stuff's gone in, learn a bit more about it over the time, and then have an opportunity to apply. And also an appreciation that, unlike lots of other grants and sectors, like farming is seasonal, and it also depends on which sector you're applying from. And so to give different opportunities for people to be able to start grants at different times. In answer to your original question, though, because obviously the first round of full grants hasn't actually closed yet, we're not going to get to see, as this particularly as the support hub, we're not going to get to see what those applications are until at least until the 15th of July, when people will be told who's been awarded and not been awarded, and then we will get some feedback on what those applications look like. What I can say is, on the support hub, we've got a number of case studies of previous farmer-led research, which is worth going and having a look at. And a lot of the work that's been done for this has been modelled on the 10 years of work that was done by innovative farmers, which is part of the Soil Association. And we're working, they're part of the consortium delivering the support hub, and we're working very closely with them. So if the case studies that you find on the support hub don't kind of give you enough of a sense of what could be done, I'd recommend going to Innovative Farmers, and they've got dozens and dozens of field trials on there, which would be a really good example. Or, as I said, reach out to the support hub, and we've got a team of like 30 experts across all different sectors and things that, you know, if you call up, we'll triage you and get you to speak to someone who's got a lot of experience in this space. So that's sort of 3 options around that, and I've sort of rabbited on. I hope that answers that question.
Lovely, thanks, Tom. If you do not know the full cost for crop trials yet, is it worth starting the adopt process now?
That's a very good question. I think that you shouldn't. So there's a lot more flexibility in the costings around this than there have been on previous grants for this sort of reason. Again, I think if you're at a point where, and I can only guess, where what you're only really waiting on is to kind of calculate some of the costs of the crop trials. This is exactly where I'd really encourage you to reach out to the support hub, sort of get put in touch with the right expert who can help work out how to either get to that figure, or how we can potentially put a figure in to the grant that will cover off the right amount of the costs, depending on what that trial is going to look like. I think it's like with all of these things, like in my experience, all of these grants, and I think we all know, like an application form for anything always takes longer than we expect. And I think if at this stage you've got like the germination of an idea, and you just making contact now and start getting some help now, because there's these amazing experts that have done dozens and dozens of these kind of trials, and they'll be able to take this fledgling idea that you've got and be like, right, well, here's some of the ways that we can make that a bit more clear, and also they've got a really good understanding of what's expected from the application process.
Thanks, Tom. I think follow-up question, I think from the same person. Does all of the grant have to go towards trials? Can some of it go towards technical development? And if so, how much?
So I guess it depends what we mean by technical development. I think to be careful here, like a lot of the farming innovation program before this was there to help technical companies and innovators to develop technologies for farmers. This is the other way. This is about farmers seeing and identifying challenges on farm and working out and having the opportunity to come up with trials and experimentations to test and trial that stuff themselves, and not to be helping technical companies developing IP. That and importantly, as I said at the beginning, this is open innovation. So this isn't about developing a new technology or developing, a new commercial product. This is about giving people the opportunity to test and trial things which would cost them time and money to do. And importantly, a big part of this is that, farmers are getting paid for their time. So if you're setting up a 2-year trial, which is going to involve a significant amount of your time over that to do this testing and trialing, that time is covered. And that's a big difference between previously, where I think, the farmer's time has not necessarily been paid for, or at least paid for adequately. So, there's appreciation here is that, if you're going to go off and do an experimentation that will protect, which ideally is going to benefit you, but is also going to benefit other people, you should be paid for your time to do that. So it's more about paying for that than it is for paying for technical development. But there's a grey area there, and I need to know more about the specifics of that project. And again, I'm happy to speak to you offline to kind of understand like where it sits in that grey area.
Thanks, Tom. A question that was sent ahead of time. I'm a sheep farmer with a redundant polytunnel that I want to convert into an aquaponic business. Can I get funding through the Adopt scheme to support the establishment of this sustainable alternative enterprise and the instalment of solar energy to keep the carbon footprint as low as possible?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie, because you sent this to me earlier today, which gave me a bit of time to have a check on this. So this isn't just Adopt, this is almost all grants. Capital expenditure generally isn't included. So but the concept you're talking about is, and so again, this would be a good one to go to the Support Hub for more detail on the specifics of what you're trying to do. And we can always go to Innovate as well to get more detail on that. But generally speaking, if you have a great idea to transition to solar powered aquaponics and you want to test and trial different ways to make that more efficient in the farming system that you're talking about, you would be looking to invest in that infrastructure, which is infrastructure that you would then keep and own yourself. What you can claim for is depreciation of that capital infrastructure over the time of the project. And there's some more details that we can give on the specific calculations of depreciation across different assets. But the point is, it's like you're still buying infrastructure for yourself, and you're then able to claim back capital of depreciation of that infrastructure over the course of the 2-year project. So I hope that makes sense. That being said, there is a separate fund available from DEFRA, which is the Farming Equipment and Technology Fund, which is which is grants of up to £25,000. I think it's between £10,000 and £25,000, of which there's 3 categories. And I had a look at it, and I think this would definitely fall into productivity, which you can apply for separately, and that is fully paid for kind of capital grants for things like the technologies that you're talking around within aquaponics. And those broad rules apply across all of this. So I think that's quite a useful one to cover off on this call.
It also might be useful for that inquiry to look to funds that might be available at district level. So whatever, if you're in a Devon district, there might be different funds that become available during the course of this year. So worth registering with the Growth Hub newsletter and the Devon Agri-Tech Alliance newsletter. And I'm sure Cecilia will helpfully put that in the chat for me to keep that, and that will keep you informed of the different types of funds like Adopt and other things that are coming through. As we find out about them, we will make sure that they are updated on those different channels. Another question: how open-minded, visionary do you think the programme organisers will be? Good question.
So I can speak honestly from the heart here and say that, you know, I've been involved in various different parts of the kind of farming innovation sector for quite a number of years now, and I have seen the amount of how hard both DEFRA and Innovate have worked within the kind of quite tight confines of kind of public money to make this the most kind of like progressive, accessible to farmers, in terms of its openness, in terms of definition of farmers, growers and foresters, and who can apply, in terms of like the fair repayment of farmers, and also for you know, down to the detail of people within the Innovate sort of back office accounting have all got copies of, you know, things like John Nick's book, and just a real openness and willingness to try and make sure that this is done fairly and realistically, and very much the same in terms of how the assessors have been briefed to assess these projects. You know, whereas previously projects and generally projects are kind of assessed on things like how they're going to add to UK PLC, what's the roadmap to the delivery of a technology, etc., etc. This is not being assessed like that. This is being assessed on how these projects are going to benefit the farmers involved in terms of productivity, profitability, and sustainability, etc., and how the outputs of these projects are going to be a benefit to the broader farming community. And that is very different to anything we've seen before. And added to that point, I would say that, you know, this is completely new. This has never been done as a public funded within England. There have been similar projects in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, and I think, you know, definitely want this to be a success and this to be a positive thing, and therefore, you know, they're going to try and evolve to make this better over time. You know, it may not. I need to be 100% honest that this first round of funding may not be perfect, and, you know, all the right projects may not get funded, but, you know, we're here with the Support Hub to kind of listen to everything that everyone's going to be saying to try and improve it as much as possible for the next round and the next round. And this is a 2-year project, so we're going to try and improve it as much as possible. The only way we can do that is with sort of genuine, honest feedback and input like we can get on this call.
Thank you. So we just want to ask for a bit of clarity on the is farmer time paid through Adopt?
Yes, absolutely. The farmers' time, the time that they spend on these projects will be paid for. Absolutely. And that was an issue. And then this is in the farming innovation program, there was the closest thing to Adopt was the research starters. There was not got correctly right. I wasn't involved in that, but my understanding is that for the research starter projects that were led by farmers, there were some real issues about what farmers' time is paid for and how much farmers' time is paid for. That has been corrected now, and it is really important that farmers are, when putting these projects together, are putting in their time. And this is another reason for the project facilitators to ensure that there is someone with the experience of doing things like costing timesheets, etc., to be involved all the way through the project to make sure that they're there to help capture this, because we're not unrealistic about knowing that farmers are self-employed most of the time. They're not used to doing timesheets. They're not used to capturing their time, and therefore they need someone there to help them to ensure they're capturing that, so they can charge back for that, to make sure that they're not doing this work for free.
Thank you, and I think that covers the follow-up question from that person as well. Is there any chance that Adopt could be withdrawn as SFI was? Should we imply early in the case that this could happen?
So, okay, I'm going to be careful on this one. So my understanding is the real reality is any funding could in theory be pulled at any point. Like, that's the absolute reality. That being said, much like SFI, the budget that was committed and had been publicly committed to is almost always going to be stuck to, because it's very difficult to roll back on publicly committed. So 20 million has been publicly committed to. The first year, all the dates are out for the 5 rounds in the first year, and so to roll back on that, I think, would be incredibly difficult. I think also, if we look at related but disconnected, which is the spending review commitments for DEFRA and environment generally, those all signal strong innovation and environmental and farming commitments so I find it highly unlikely. And just to take the SFI, because I appreciate there is a lot of what's the word I want to use here? I think there is some concern and some worry and a lack of trust around these things. And just, with SFI, I think it did feel like a rug pull to everybody, but the people who had signed up to SFI before the budget limits were hit, that was committed to. So I do 100%. I'm not trying to sound like a politician on this call. I'm just sort of, that's the only way I can kind of interpret it. But very, very, very unlikely of what's been committed, and very publicly committed.
Thank you. If total costs for the trials go over 100,000, will Adopt consider it?
No. So one of the areas that they are very strict on is those limits. So I think you need to try and find a way to make sure it came under the 100,000. I mean, I know, for example, already, some of the first round support hub applications were declined, potentially because they weren't hitting the number they were meant to hit. And so it seems like a silly thing, but I think obviously when these are done as applications, and there's very strict sort of criteria for those applications around things like how much is the maximum amount. If you don't stick within those clear criteria, then.
Lovely, thanks, Tom. Going back to farmers being paid for time, please can you clarify what evidence will be required, e.g., if timesheets only, is there a template farmers can use? For grants, payroll evidence is usually required also, but most farmers won't have this.
Right, so we're starting to get into kind of detail, which I think would be better picked up directly with the support of this call. We have a whole, so we at the support have a whole bunch of templates and guidance for exactly this, and the project's facilitators that you'll be matched up with on either a support grant or a full grant will also have lots and lots of this, and some of it comes with just the Innovate grant applications. There is, and so one of the things that was really made clear on this was previously, normally on an Innovate grant, you have to apply with a UK with the Companies House registered business. There was an understanding that lots and lots of farmers don't run their company through a business and don't run through payroll, and so lots of exceptions have been made to make this work for people that aren't registered as a UK company, are either self-employed and don't run kind of a PAYE every month, or at least, or if the PAY doesn't reflect exactly what they're paying themselves. So all of that has been taken into consideration for this, and between us, Innovate themselves, and the facilitator, we will have the templates and the facilities to kind of make that easier. And again, sorry if that doesn't sound like a clear answer, but I think obviously it's going to really vary. I think this is one of the things that's made this difficult, but also exciting and interesting, which is like every single farming organization and it is a slightly different business, and it's really hard to fit anything into a mold and into too many templates. So each individual case is going to have to work out what's the best way to make it work for that case. But the support is there, is the kind of the headline there.
Lovely, thank you, Tom. I also noticed in the chat, thank you to Joe for sharing that anybody on the call in Dorset, I've lost the thing now, please see the next round of UK Shared Prosperity Fund administered by Dorset Council as well. So worth if anybody's from Dorset, look at Dorset Council's website. And is it possible for a partnership sole trader to be the lead farmer?
Yeah, it's not just possible. It's again, and I'm sorry if I've not made this clear. So as you'll probably rightly notice, like that hasn't been possible with Innovate grants before. It is possible now. We've got a whole bunch of guidance on how to kind of get it through the Innovate system. But yes, the only criteria to be the lead farmer is that you are a commercial growing operation. So you could be you don't have to be specifically registered. If you can demonstrate that you are a farmer, a forester, or a grower that is commercially producing and selling food or fibre, then you are counted, and you can be a UK registered business, a sole trader, a partnership. That's absolutely fine. So it's a lot of work has been done to try and make it absolutely as open as possible, so as not to exclude lots and lots of the productive farming businesses and individuals and organizations that didn't necessarily fit into the more restrictive categorization of previous Innovate grants. So Henry, thanks for asking that question. That's really good to clarify.
I think I've picked up all the questions in the chat. So Shyla, have I missed any? Don't think so. Is there any further questions before I go on a little waffle? As I always like to do. What I've been really struck by from yourself, Tom, is that that real openness to talk to us and hear from farming communities at a real local and regional level, and that to me is really encouraging because as I always bang on about it, to me it's making sure that we get the recipients of the grants, the farmers, actually been able to input and have their say. And so it's really good to hear that you're, as part of the support hub, listening to this feedback, and that's being included in the iterations of the grant funding. And yeah, definitely I would say about a year, 18 months ago, as part of the Devon Agri-Tech Alliance steering group meetings, the feedback was the frustration with Innovate grants being not very accessible at all to farmers. So, it's really positive to see that there are moves being made to make sure that accessibility is a lot better. And hopefully we're going to see some wonderfully innovative and wonderful projects from the Southwest, I hope, as being funded by the Adopt Fund. Is there any? Oh, there you go. Has the funding got to be approved before time, and can it be costed through the grant? Oh, sorry. Has the funding got to be approved before time can be costed through the grant? So, would time be counted prior to the approval?
No. So for the support grant, so the support grant gets paid out as soon as, well, not literally the moment you click submit, but once a full grant application is submitted, then that qualifies for the £2,500 to be paid. So it is slightly delayed. and sorry, just to be clear, all grant funding unfortunately is delayed. Time spent to do the work on the application, unfortunately, that's just never going to get funded, and I don't know how you'd get funding to do the application. The exact timings, I know that again a lot of work has been done to try and make sure the payouts are done as quickly as possible. It's always going to be done retroactively, unfortunately. I'm not sure if that, I'm not 100% sure I'm clear on the question, but I think that's answered it. But please feel free to follow up if I've not answered it.
Thanks, Tom.
Yes.
Yes, answered. Thank you. The best way to people to contact the support hub is just been posted in the chat. Thank you, Tom. What we will do is after today, we will share around the recording so you can look back over the recording at the responses. We'll also share around Tom's slides, which has all the details in that he shared with you. And we'll also share around those different key contacts that will be useful to look at, including the Adopt Support Hub page. We'll share our Devon Agri-Tech Alliance and the Growth Hub. Because we're Devon County Council, they will be Devon specific sort of contacts, those that around the things around funding that I referred to earlier. But if you're not from Devon, it's worth having a look at your local authority pages as well. If you are from Devon, it's worth looking at your district level local authority pages as well to keep updated with any more localised funding that's coming through, particularly the Rural England Prosperity Fund, which may be coming up, and that is a capital pot of funding, but administered by district local authorities. So one to look at as well. If there aren't any further questions, is there any further thoughts from you, Tom, before we say goodbye?
No, just again, one of the things I'm really keen is that we don't end up in a year's time or 2 years' time, and we haven't had a fair representation of farmers and farms had an opportunity with this sort of thing, and I do really care deep. Round two of support grant is open now. Just to answer that question. And I really do deeply care about this, and so I've often people say like, please do reach out and please do get, and a lot of people involved in support up too. So I really do encourage people to reach out. Like, we really do want to help and make sure that this is really helpful and productive and starts to help move things forwards for everybody in the UK agri-food scene.
Lovely. Thank you, Tom, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We'll share around the follow-up information that I just spoke about, and yeah, please do keep in touch with us. Any other kind of ideas and topics that you want to hear from, please tell us, because we always try and get it sorted one way or another. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you. Bye.